Hi, my name is Veronica Martinez, and I will be arguing against the case for the resolution the U.S. federal government should heavily regulate internet pornography, as argued by my opponent Kayla Starmer. In hearing my opponent's case, I have found two major flaws. She argues that internet porn should be regulated for our kids, and two, she almost exclusively focuses on the problems of internet pornography, but never actually presents a plan to take care of this problem. The only vestige of a plan we hear is in the last 3 seconds of the speech, in which again she simply states that internet pornography should be regulated. Unfortunately, the resolution is whether the U.S. federal government should regulate internet pornography or not. Therefore, this is a policy proposition, not a value proposition. My opponent had the responsibility of telling us, 1. Exactly what specific action should be taken in order for the government to regulate internet porn. 2. Who will be taking this action? 3. Where will the funding come from? 4. Who will enforce this new regulation? And at the very least, 5. Giving a time frame of when this regulation would be carried out. My opponent has failed to be clear in all of these areas. This is a prima facie stock issue. She has failed to provide this vital information and to present a plan for the U.S. federal government to take into consideration. My opponent's major argument is that internet pornography is harmful to young children. In this, I would wholeheartedly agree with her. But you, judge, as a lawmaker, although you may agree that internet pornography should not be viewed by our children, you have to decide whether you will sign this plan or not. No matter how much good a plan might eventually do, you can't sign it if you don't know exactly what it's doing or how it will be taken into effect. As mentioned before, although she does state that the U.S. federal government should regulate the material being put on the internet, she never presents a specific plan. Failing to nail down a specific plan decreases education because we can never have a substantive debate about the plan. If my opponent were to present a specific plan, my first question would be, where would funding come from? Since no plan for funding was presented, we have to assume that this will be deficit spending. Unfortunately, the USFG has reached a debt of $16.9 trillion. If the U.S. cannot pay its own debt, this plan will only push us over the debt ceiling. This will only bring about negative impacts. This means that the government legally can't pay IRS funds, Social Security, veteran benefits, Medicare reimbursements for doctors and hospitals, bond interest owed investors, payments to contractors, and paychecks for federal workers or other government workers and military personnel. If the government can't pay its bills on time, then some of the people to whom it owes money won't be able to pay their bill on time. That's going to mean a rise in missed payments on mortgages, car loans, and credit cards. That means bank failures and sharply reduced credit availability even for people who aren't specifically counting on a check from Uncle Sam. Debt-financed investment, construction projects, vehicle purchases, small business expansions will most likely grind to a halt as nobody wants to lend out new money until they're sure they're getting paid what they already owe. That will create a second collapse in incomes and an additional wave of business and citizens unable to pay their bills, a financial crisis, and a decline in input that would put the country into a recession. In 2011, the United States reached a point of near default. The delay in raising the debt ceiling resulted in the first downgrade in the U.S. credit rating, a sharp drop in the stock market, and an increase in borrowing costs. The only way to fund a plan for the government to regulate internet porn is to reduce the production of the penny. If we were to cut production by a mere 1%, then that would be an additional $1.2 million in the government's pockets. Coin production has already been slowing as it is. According to the U.S. Mint coin production figures, coin production has decreased from 28 million coins in 2000 to 9 million coins in 2012. Thus, no deficit spending would be needed, and funds for an internet regulation policy would be available. My opponent's lack of a specific plan, including funding and enforcement, shows that they have not fully thought through all the ins and outs of what it would take for the U.S. federal government to regulate internet porn. If any action is to be taken, it should not be at the expense of the U.S. people or without a clear and concise plan of action being presented before the U.S. government.